recording
We're recording
on election night.
for our for our dear viewers to situate this in time. This
And
is we were
listeners.
Huh? Did I say viewers?
Yes.
Oh, well, for Patreon viewers, they can see I voted. And for listeners, it is Tuesday, November 5th, election night of 2024, and my tummy hurts.
It's
Um,
it's it's Destiel night.
it's Destiel night, that is true. It is 4 p.m. Pacific time, so does that mean
It's 7 p.m. over here.
polls are closing?
Yes. Although
Yep.
it might be a few days until we get a final
Yep.
results. Because at least that's how it was last time. I remember that full week
Well,
of
that
uncertainty.
was almost everything was mail-in because of
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And of all the things that we are discussing
I think
in
it's
this
very fitting.
energy,
It's very fitting.
you have uh made me watch something I never thought I was going to watch. It's I have said before that this podcast reminds me of being in film school, and because I like getting to watch things that I wouldn't otherwise watch and then discuss them. But it is like film school, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is a film I'm watching and gonna be discussing. This is on my letterbox list now. uh, and what is that, Fabiola?
I made Saffron watch the South Park movie and a handful of South Park episodes.
Yes,
And we're recording this on election day.
yes. Why? Okay, what? Okay, let me step back. What? When? How did you start watching South Park? Because it was kind of sudden. It seemed that you were just suddenly
I
sending me video essays.
I think it was I was watching spilling the milk commentary videos, and that's
Oh.
how it started. And I was like, oh, this is a very rich text to take apart. This is very fun to observe, and also some of the jokes are funny to me. I do like some of the characters,
I
and it's also fun to trace the evolution of the
Yeah.
show.
The more I
It very much
watched,
tickles an academic part of my brain.
yeah. And how have you just watched like a handful of episodes, or like how much have you actually seen of this show?
I've definitely seen at least one episode per season, but I don't think
Oh.
I've gotten close to being half of the episodes because there's a billion episodes.
Yeah, so it's been going on for since the
Since
90s?
97.
Okay. So is that math? Wait,
Almost 30 years.
27 years? I guess?
Yeah.
Damn. So this is, well, it's not the longest running show that we've discussed on the pod because we did discuss Star Trek, and as
Yeah.
a franchise, that's been around much longer. It is also our first fully animated piece of media.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because there's been parts of stuff that we've watched that have been animated. I feel like probably most notably is the Scooby Doo episode of Supernatural that
Yeah.
we watched.
And I
Um,
did include another Scooby Doo inspired episode for this one.
which is just weird. Can I
Yeah,
just say,
that's how pre-movie South Park was. I just wanted you to have a range of the eras, and the pre-movie era was just weird stuff is happening.
yeah, because like it's it was, what is it? Korn's Groovy Pirate Adventure.
Yes, with the
And
actual band members of Korn.
okay, it's like a Scooby-Doo parody, but
Yeah.
it's like taking it to its most absurd, not even it's it, I don't know. I don't that yeah, I don't know.
It's putting Korn in Scooby Doo.
But it's also like there's Antonio Banderas' sex doll.
Yes, and they also dig up Kyle's grandma so they can scare the fifth graders.
Yeah. It's
It's it's like an overwhelming episode of so many things happening within 20 minutes.
it it kind of just seemed to be weird for weird's sake.
Yeah, that's a lot of yeah, that's basically pre-movie South Park. And that was like kind of what 90s alternative culture was.
Yeah.
Like a lot of stuff, and especially like TV made for older audiences, was like getting really weird. Like this is how we got Adult Swim, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, I feel like I've heard South Park be called a satire a lot, and we've certainly like discussed multiple works for this podcast that are satires, and I think that there is an element of like camp to all parodies or satires because it's like taking a known genre or idea, um, and exaggerating it, amplifying it, and thus to kind of change its meaning or make new meaning out of it. And I can see that in the South Park content that I watched. But it's also, dare I say, it's camping the concept of satire itself,
Yeah.
because
And that's kind of what another of the episodes was about. Like that's what Tale of Scrotie, McBoogerballs is about.
yeah,
Because it's kind of their response to them, to like a bunch of people like reading into what the episodes are about or what the message is supposed to be, and they're like, sometimes we just made these to have fun and there's like no underlying message exactly.
yeah, like that to me was probably, that was the episode, I guess, that finally made it click why you wanted to discuss this for the show. Because I messaged you last night being
Yeah,
like, you're gonna have to
there's a
like
bunch
prove to
of
me why it's
reasons
camp.
to discuss the show. Like I'm pretty sure there are like entire college courses about this show.
I mean, it's been running for a really long time,
Yeah,
so
and it has changed as the years have gone by. Like as you've seen, pre-movie South Park is very different from post-movie South Park,
yeah.
to the point where like the showrunners hate the first three seasons because they're very different from what the show later became in a more consistent way.
Yeah. Okay, should we try to give, because I don't think I really knew what the plot of South Park was before watching it. I just kind of knew that it was like, this is offensive and controversial. So, do you want to try to take a stab at saying what this is about? Also, you
Yes.
have done all of the research and like the background and
Yes.
stuff.
I have like rabbit holed into this show over like the past 6 months.
So give me
Yeah.
expose to me. Give me some
Yeah.
exposition.
So it generally, throughout the course of its billion episodes, it follows this group of fourth grade boys, the like the main guys you see everywhere, and arguably the main two are Stan and Kyle, which are the representatives for the showrunners, Trey and Matt. Trey is Stan, Matt is Kyle. Those are like their kind of stand-ins. And then there's kind of the other two icons of the show, kind of, which are Cartman, who is the most evil child you will ever witness on television. There's a video that did the math of like how many years in prison he would get for all of his crimes, and it's in like the 300.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then there's Kenny, one of my favorites. He's he's the one in the orange parka with the muffled voice and only occasionally face revealed. And
Yeah.
later on, he gets an insane amount of lore. And
And
he's one of
then
my faves. I love him.
there's also Butters, who
I
appeared in a
also
couple
love
episodes.
Butters. Butters
Yeah.
is another icon fan favorite. He's known to be consistently tortured.
Yeah. Well, and then Kenny is always killed. Is that his the thing? I Cause it's like, oh
At
my god,
least
you
in the
killed Kenny.
earlier seasons, that was basically every episode until they eventually got really tired and are like, we don't know what else to do with him. So they like semi permanently killed him off at one point.
Oh,
So he was like missing for an entire season, like canonically dead. But then he came
man.
back, and then there was a bunch of lore about how he works, how like the whole death and coming back thing works.
Oh. So it's so wait, they're trying to what became just like a gag that's like, oh, we don't no fucks given. It's just it is what it is. They're like, let's try to retcon a reason why this happens.
Yeah, and it's like Lovecraftian, and it makes his life depressing.
Yeah. Which I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you like. You like sad, weird, twisted things.
Yeah,
And I mean, I think I know why. It's because they can be very like rich to dig into and discuss.
yeah.
So, okay, you we watched.
Okay, so there's this the I we've only covered like the characters. I've only explained what the characters
Oh,
are.
yeah,
So
cuz
the four, occasionally five little guys, little 9-year-olds, they live in this real town called South Park. It is real in Colorado.
oh,
Yes, it is very real. And it's basically them going through and doing the most insane things for like 27 years now.
yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with like making commentary on current events, which is all the show is also like particularly good with timing because each episode is made within a week.
Wait, how did huh? Wait, how do they animate within a week?
They already have all the renders, and like the animation is pretty simple already.
Yeah, I guess so.
And like the first ever short was they're literally made out of construction paper. The
Yeah.
technically construction paper, stop motion.
Yeah. One of the it seemed like the title sequence changed a lot, and one of the
Yes.
one or two of the seasons had like you could see them doing
Yeah.
the construction paper, and I was like, oh, is that actually how all of it's made? There's not
It's
any
how it
like
started. But like
I'm
I
assuming
think by the
there's
first season already it was all on the computer.
yeah, so it's like I guess it's construction paper making the assets, and then it's like um
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I mean, it has a very like distinct visual style
Yeah.
among
which I would argue is one of their camp qualities because it's like this very childlike style, and it's like made of like school materials like pencil and construction paper, and it's all very simplistic. Like the whole point behind the design is that like they were just the two of them doing it by themselves, so they can't like really draw, so they just made shapes
Mm-hmm.
from construction paper, and that's it.
Okay, who are these guys? Who are these creators? What's their deal? Are they Canadian?
No, they're from Colorado.
Okay, then why do they have a whole thing? Why is the movie all about going to war with Canada?
because
Okay.
because Canada is up there. It's pretty
Because they
close.
can?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're actually from Colorado. Okay.
Yes. And they're very close to having an EGOT.
Yeah, because they were part of the Book of Mormon team.
Yes.
And
So
then they
that's how they
were,
have their Tony. And they
and
have
they,
Emmys and Grammys from the show. They're just missing the Oscar that they almost had from the movie.
ah. The music's good. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like mind blowing best musical kind of music I've ever heard, but it's like
Yeah, I maintain
good.
that the wrong song was nominated.
What song was nominated?
Blame Canada was the one that was nominated. And it was performed by Robin Williams at the Oscars.
Oh. Oh, he would kill that.
He
Yeah.
did eat. He did eat. But
Yeah.
like the one I would have nominated and I'm pretty sure would have won would be Satan's song because
Yeah.
it's the best one.
Yeah. Satan's my favorite character in the movie.
He's so good. And Kenny's always giving him advice.
Yeah. No, I like felt emotional about Satan. I
Yeah.
didn't really feel
Satan is
emotional.
beloved. He is beloved.
I didn't feel emotional about anything else that happened in the movie, but I cared about Satan. So, okay. So, was this their first Matt and wait, Trey and Matt? Wait, what are they? Matt Stone and Trey Parker? Okay. Was this their first show? Like how did they get into the industry? Like what is
They
their
started, and this is a common thread with the other thing that you were like, why did you make me watch this, Fabiola?
is it
They
trauma?
also started in trauma.
Oh.
And we're seeing a pattern here.
Interesting.
Yeah, they did Cannibal the Musical.
Oh hey, I saw people watching that this Halloween season because of the Scarecrow Psychotronic challenge. I saw some that on people's watch lists. Okay, interesting. You know, I mean, I think we've talked about this before, like the loss of having like true like low budget stuff or just like having entries like for up and coming filmmakers and stuff in our current Hollywood
Yeah.
system. And yeah, because now I'm like, how would, because I'm like, how, because you said they were 27 when they started working on the show.
Yeah. So I think they were younger than us when they did Cannibal the Musical.
Like, that's, I can't imagine that now. Like,
Yeah.
someone in their 20s getting a show, a cable network show.
Yeah.
It's, you have to like have worked a long time in the industry or known someone, basically, to get your own project now.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons they were able to make South Park was because they originally made like this little Christmas card animation that was like sent to like a producer friend, and then that producer friend like sent it around throughout a whole bunch of places around until eventually they got a call.
That's that's really cool. That's pretty cool. So, okay. This is a show that I feel like it's known for being controversial.
Yes.
I trust you. So when you were like, let's discuss this, you brought it to me. You're like, hey, let's watch this. I'm like, cool. I know there's gonna be something worth talking about. And I've watched a bunch of stuff and I'm like, ooh, I feel like there's some really interesting things to talk about. Cause I had a especially for me, like watching the movie and then watching the tale of Scrotie McBoogerballs.
Yeah.
Um, ridiculous title, but like those two and like how they're like exploring censorship, I think is really really interesting. What like I guess you okay, you said that there's college classes and stuff talked about it. Like what are the main I'm curious like what are the main arguments and like analyses have you seen? And is there any that you've specifically seen talking about this film, or not, sorry, this film, this franchise, I guess you can say, this property? Have you seen anyone talk about it in terms of camp? Or are there specific arguments that you think are relevant to this podcast and our discussions? Because it is talked about a lot, but I guess what can we specifically bring to that conversation before we dive into specifics?
Yeah, so I feel like I mainly like came to it independently, but like mainly from like gathering a whole bunch of like throughout video essays and our supplemental material that I have, and also like just watching and studying the show myself. I feel like a lot of the philosophy behind the supplemental material is like really helpful in understanding why. And so basically it's an article by BJ Colangelo, who's been on a bunch of podcasts, and she basically describes the show as a Rorschach test.
Mm,
And yeah, basically a lot of the show is just presenting ideas, and the viewer very much interprets it however they see it.
mm,
And I feel like, as we've covered before, an aspect of camp is that it's amoral, but it's political.
mm-hmm,
And I think being political doesn't necessarily mean that it will always like have a political message, or like side with with a specific statement, but like that it proposes politics in the first place.
mm. That's a really interesting point. Yeah. I have absolutely seen, especially in fandom spaces, with a kind of general response of like, well, why are you making this political? I just want to enjoy this show or whatever. Like, when I think many people are aware to live your life is to be involved in politics. Like,
Yeah, and that's kind of how the movie came to be, because a lot
mm-hmm,
of the movie was informed by their experiences with what they could and could not do in the show, and also mainly their experiences with the MPAA. Because
mm-hmm,
like there's famous tension between the two. Like for example, like one of the more famous fun facts about the movie is that they had to like specifically count the F bombs, because if they went over 399, I think they would get an NC-17 rating.
whoa, huh,
So yeah, a lot of the movies politics are basically like them in real time realizing that they have to deal with a lot of systems in Hollywood that
Mm-hmm.
would want to regulate their work.
Yeah, and then the Scrotie McBoogerballs. I can't believe I have to say that every single time I want to talk about that
That's the
episode.
point. It's supposed to be really stupid.
That feels like a kind of an evolution of these ideas of like n- not just being it, because you think, oh, it's going to be about book banning and stuff, but then it's more about like how what audiences interpretations of work are going to be and how you don't have control of that.
Yeah.
um and
And it's also kind of about how, like, a lot of quote unquote banned books aren't even that crazy in the first
yeah.
place, because it starts with Mr. Garrison hyping up Catcher in the Rye, like, oh, it's been banned, and like, please be mature about this book. And then when they read it, they're like, there's absolutely nothing here that's like particularly shocking to
Yeah.
us.
Side note, have you read A Catcher in the Rye? Because I never have.
I haven't, but I definitely know that they did read it for the episode, because apparently, like, Holden Caulfield does like mention like phonies a lot in the book, which is what like
Oh,
they keep quoting.
yeah. Yeah, this isn't, it's I can also see how this idea of like works that are just presenting the fact that issues are political, that there can be multiple interpretations of it without kind of trying to say one side is right, or just, it's just like showing that there is an issue that there is opinions about. How that, yeah, I guess like I know we've said before like that is camp, but I'm also still trying to kind of work my head around like how that kind of concept is camp. And I guess it's like,
I think it boils down to, it forces you to think about something that is objectively stupid, like a South Park episode.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of why, like an aspect of camp, like good bad taste. It's like you have to,
Yeah, this show is very much informed by good bad taste.
because you have to be like, I enjoy watching this. It's like,
This
okay.
being insanity.
It's like, okay, you enjoy watching this? Tell me why. And to tell me why, you end up having to like think critically about it.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain to someone at
And like the tell me why of it in the first place, like implies like a need to like explain one's
mm,
taste, which isn't really expected of. Tell me why you like the movie Ladybird.
well, I can. I Because
Yeah, I know.
it
That's why I use it as an example, because I know you really like it. But it's also
yeah.
because it's universally loved. Like, everyone likes Ladybird. Like, no
Yeah.
one would really question, why do you like Ladybird?
Yeah. I just don't find I can understand why someone would like I understand. I
Yeah.
understand like in the theory of comedy
I don't like
why
all the jokes.
South Park is
I
funny because
definitely don't like all the jokes.
it it
Comedy is very subjective.
yeah. But like one of the main like kind of tenets of comedy is a subversion of expectations, and a lot of its kind of absurd aspects are you didn't expect this thing to happen, so it's shocking and thus it's funny. And I don't it has to be absurd in a way that is like I actually would not have expected it, because some of the maybe it's just because now like shock humor is more common, but a lot of the stuff I'm like this doesn't surprise me. Like the Woodland creature Christmas
Yeah,
was
that
that
was like very pre. What was that one like YouTube show about like all the cute animals dying? Like that was pre all that.
What show about animals
There
dying?
was there was like this YouTube show that was like animated and it was like these cute animals dying gruesome deaths that I think Woodland Creatures predates it.
Well, I don't know. I will say
Yeah.
something that I just personally dislike. Like, I don't, because it hits me in the uncanny valley. And I know that's why it's effective, but I don't like things that are associated with like children's content and
Mm.
gore. That
Mm.
just unsettles me. So I was like enjoying like how the Woodland Critter Christmas was kind of a parody of Christmas episodes, like to begin with. Like I liked the like the narrator being like, "This is what happened,"
And it
and
all rhymes, and then the theme song is all about how Christmas is only once a year and it's only once a year. A
yeah,
special time once a year.
like I liked that. I liked how it like played on the tropes of a Christmas, episode. But once it
Then
started,
it gets
like,
crazy.
yeah, the animals fucking each other in the ass while covered in blood. Like, yeah, I guess I get why it's funny because you wouldn't usually see that.
Yeah, and it also has the whole framing device of this is Cartman's little Christmas story, so of course he's going to make it insane. Of
Yeah.
course he's going to throw the stuff in. I'm also pretty sure this is one of the last minute episodes where like
Oh.
I do love the episodes where you can tell that they're kind of delirious.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of one thing where it was like I actually laughed while watching these episodes. I like
You
definitely
didn't laugh at Kill John Lennon.
no.
That's I love Kill John Lennon. The way he just immediately finishes the book and closes it and just goes kill John Lennon and goes to get a knife from the kitchen immediately after finishing reading
Maybe
Catcher in the
that's
Rye.
maybe you find that funny because you're endeared to that character already.
Maybe, but like I also just like that joke in and of itself
You
as
like
well.
evil little kids.
Yeah. I like the idea that the book immediately programmed him to want to kill John Lennon.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get I get what's funny about like the this idea that like seeing a piece of media will immediately make you react a certain way because obviously we know that's not how media works. Like in the movie, there's like the whole like, oh, you can set your farts on fire, and so then they try to do that, and then that's how Kenny dies. It's
And the
like
doctor is George Clooney.
that that is kind of funny.
He
I do
also
think that is
played
kind of funny.
a dog in one of the earlier seasons.
Oh. We can now put it on. There's been multiple films that we've watched with a surprise George Clooney cameo.
Yes.
It's all interesting.
And like humor is very subjective. Like I'm pretty sure there are things that you find funny that I don't find funny.
Probably. There's just also a lot. I mean, this is the thing. This is our cruelty season. This
Yeah.
this show is mean.
Yeah.
And the meanness is that's just I it's unrelenting in a way that wears me down.
And I
And
didn't
makes
even show you the Butters episode. 'Cause that one's
good.
very mean. There's if there's a Butters centric episode, it's going to be hostile towards him.
I mean, I think it's interesting. Okay. Like there's so much to talk about with this show. There's like
Like I feel
it's
like the meanest episode is also possibly its best, which is the Britney episode, which is like
yeah.
genuinely upsetting to watch.
Yeah.
And like that's what makes it really effective and really good to me, because like the whole point is like, you know, things are bad when South Park of all things is telling you to pump the brakes.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's the thing. Here's the thing that is so interesting about that episode to me is that it's like basically the core of it seems to be saying, "Hey, we should all be kinder to Britney Spears." But the way it's saying that is showing Britney Spears with her almost her entire head blown off, and like her like it's like this it's so
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point, because the rest of the characters are like completely ignoring the fact that she has her head blown off to like focus on like random details about her body or how she's performing on stage.
Yeah.
And
And
Cal's
like
like, you guys, her head is blown off.
I do think like it is one of the most brutal takedowns of like American celebrity, like the way Americans react to celebrities. I don't know, like I I still have yet to see um Superstar by Todd Hines, but like
It's really
com-
good. It's not exactly like a takedown of how people respond to a celebrity, although it is a part of it.
I was gonna but I was gonna say that like I feel like that's the kind of thing where it's like, ooh, this is like an interesting text that should be discussed. And like
Yeah,
one
it
could say
is
the
one of my
exact
favorite movies.
I think one could say the exact same thing about this episode of South Park.
Yeah, the Britney episode is my favorite episode of South Park, and I would argue one of my favorite episodes of television ever.
Hello, I'm Bob Summers. Is today the day?
What is going on? Why do you want Britney Spears to die?
Well, nobody wants her to die, little boy. We all simply need her to. Do you understand?
No!
Look, kid. Throughout history, people have found it necessary to engage in human sacrifice. In ancient times, humans would commonly pick one lovely girl, adorn her with jewels, treat her like a goddess, and then watch her die.
We Americans like to think we're more civilized now, but the truth is our lust for torture and death is no different than it was in gladiator times.
Only difference is that now Americans like to watch people put to death through magazines and photographs.
It's a damn shame, too. Old ways were better. Used to be we just picked someone by lottery and then stoned them to death.
No, the American people don't want to stone people to death anymore. Best have the sacrifice kill itself.
You mean everyone in the country wants Britney Spears to kill herself?
Britney was chosen a long time ago to be built up and...
Yeah. I mean,
Because it's just so well made and so effective, and it very much leans into how upsetting the whole situation was.
yeah. Well, and oh gosh. So like it's been a couple years, but I watched the documentary about Britney Spears when it came out, which was basically when suddenly everyone was like, "Oh, we were really mean to Britney Spears. We should be nice to her now." And so it is really interesting that this came out in 2008.
From South Park of all places. And they like in the episode acknowledged like, yeah, we do have fun like making fun of celebrities, but like maybe this time we should like lay off for a little, because this is getting really crazy.
Yeah.
And like in their episode commentaries, they were explaining that like the episode was kind of partially conceived through like one of their writers retreats, and they were all talking about how like they're like genuinely concerned for her, and they're like she's gonna die soon because of all
Yeah.
this.
And thank fucking God she's still alive.
Yeah.
And you know, from what I've seen, she's doing okay. But people are still weird about
Yeah.
about I almost said Taylor Swift. People
Well,
can
a different
people-
kind of weird.
be, yeah,
about
it's like
her.
people are weird about Taylor Swift, but that's its own thing. Yeah, like, so okay, for we should maybe give a little context if people haven't seen this episode that we're discussing, because
Which I
it
highly recommend.
it kind of basically starts with like them, they're watching the 2008 Democratic debate, and then it's like they're like, this is so important, kids, you need to pay attention, and then it's interrupted by Britney Spears watch. And it's like the big, make a big deal out of the fact that she's like on a camping trip, and then someone, paparazzi, videotaped her peeing, and like then there's basically escalating over the course of the episode, these escalating
Yeah, because
Britney
she
Spears watch.
then moves to a hotel in South Park, which is where the boys get the idea of like, we can make a lot of money from taking a picture of her. And
Yeah,
like they managed to get in her room by like claiming that they're her sons. And when she's like, oh, you are not my sons, like that's
she,
like another like insanely devastating blow. And then she attempts suicide,
yeah,
and it just stays there with them for a while.
yeah. And it's like
The little
they,
cartoon construction paper kids.
and like, and then the escalating things that they're like being like, it's so embarrassing that this is happening to Britney, and then the, you know, the kids are being like, guys, you need to be kind to her, like give her a break. And it's, the thing is that it's like not even that far from reality at all, of the kinds of sensational stories that like I don't remember, I was too young to have ever like seen stuff on TV, but gosh, I remember like hearing gossip about it, and I remember seeing stuff on, you know, magazines, like in the grocery store. And honestly, you know, stuff like Us and People still exists and are
Yeah.
still trash publications. Sorry, but like those front covers and like the way they treat celebrities is disgusting. And yeah, and then the kind of the point of the episode is that like America needs a human sacrifice, and they choose these young women who become stars to be that human sacrifice.
Yeah, and they need it for the harvest. They're like, it's for the harvest. Without the sacrifice, the harvest wouldn't be good. Like, it's the harvest is their weird justification for it.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the next sacrifice is Miley Cyrus.
Yep. And that was so that was 2008.
Yes.
That was
Miley was 15.
That was before, so that was before,
That was like season 2 of Hannah Montana.
damn. They fucking called it. They knew. But because of course you know. Of course, like,
Because like it happens all the time.
yeah.
Like I think it was a Rain Fisher Kwan. I don't think I'm pronouncing her name right, but I think she like coined the term getting womaned.
I have heard that phrase before.
Yeah. Which basically is, there's a famous woman that we really like until we decide not to like her.
Yeah. Who do you think that is right now?
It's been a minute since that happened, but well, actually, it's definitely Chapel Roan, because everyone's like really on her
Yeah. No, that's
for asserting
absolutely,
herself.
no, that's absolutely it. And also for her being like, hey, I am not going to endorse anyone because that's a huge fucking responsibility, and I don't want that kind of, like, I don't want to have that kind of influence. And people were calling her a Trump supporter, which is like, Jesus Christ. No, it is chaperone. Absolutely. You're so right. Are there other ways in which South Park has been very prophetic? I know you were, speaking of the election, we're watching some things while I was trying to finish the episodes.
Yeah, so a lot of the times, well, like the times that like there have been election years, there an episode of South Park is set to air the day after, and they correctly predicted 2008. And they were very sure that Hillary was going to win 2016. But then the night before the Tuesday night before the Wednesday the episode was supposed to air, the whole election happened, and they were scrambling at like 2 a.m. to rewrite basically the whole episode.
Oh, damn.
They had to basically redo it within a day. And it was also during their serialized era, which also meant that the election also derailed the rest of the season's storyline.
Oh, damn. Damn. Yeah. Do I remember, did I see some things in the video essays they sent, you shared with me, that like the guy who's their teacher like becomes like a Trump stand-in?
Yes,
is that right?
Mr. Garrison is the Trump stand-in, which is in a way kind of their own way to like try to not do the same thing as everyone else, because a lot of their like comedy philosophy is like based on like, let's try to be original and not try to do what everyone else is doing. And at that time what everyone was doing is making fun of Trump, and like specifically Trump the person with the name and everything. And so like one of the ways they like kind of avoided that was being like, it's Garrison but it's also Trump.
Yeah.
And like that's also part of the reason why they've delayed season 27. It's because they're like, we've already said all that's ever been said and has been thought about Trump and like the current political climate, and we're not going to try to predict the election again.
That makes sense. Yeah. I noticed, is it every episode starts with the that like content or like viewer discretionary?
Yeah.
What is it? Viewer discretion advise thing.
Yeah.
But it says like all, what is it? All the characters
are fictional, and
all celebrity voices
are impersonated badly.
Yeah, or poorly. But yeah, poorly. Yeah. Sorry to correct your grammar. I think that's but yeah.
And like, I think it also like near the end is like, this should not be viewed by anyone.
Yeah. Which is really like, I don't know. That feels like, that title card in itself feels like something to unpack, where it's like, I don't know. I guess it's very much acknowledging the fact that it is fiction. It's performed. It's like, yeah, it might have an impact on the real world and real people, but like, it's not even that they're trying to like impersonate celebrities well. It's just like,
yeah,
it's kind of all for shits and giggles, I guess.
Yeah, which very much relates to what the BJ Colangelo article talks about. And like one of the passages is, despite the very like unserious vibe of the show, like a lot of it is very consistently clearly just people wanting to make each other laugh. But it also happens to be this very national show watched by millions of people. And so she writes, despite all that, South Park has been continually treated by critics and culture writers alike as a measuring stick for the current state of the culture wars. The New York Times published how South Park perfectly captures our era of outrage, and the AV Club followed with South Park raised a generation of trolls. The show is unwillingly treated as the ultimate arbiter of American political commentary and entertainment, establishing an impossible standard for all involved and at least setting up viewers for frustration and disappointment when the show fails to meet the standards it never asked for. And also, in relation to that, there's another section of this where she writes, in a 2004 interview, New York Times writer Sharon Waxman called the lack of taking a stance childish and asked, "Doesn't anything matter?" To which Parker retorted, "That's not our job. Our job is making fun of stuff." After this full franchise rewatch, I realized that the intentions behind Parker and Stone's commentary doesn't actually matter. People watching the show are going to see and take from it what they want, regardless of what the duo says or how it's presented. Their job is to make fun of stuff. Our job is to figure it out, what it means to us personally.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally the point of the tale of Scrotie.
Yes.
McBoogerballs. Which, in the fact that the creators of the show is self-aware of that fact makes me more inclined to appreciate it, I guess. Because, like, I mean, I definitely think that this should be a clip that we use for the, you know, the edit of the show and promo of it, of, like, when the kids are, like, in court trying to argue that the thing that they wrote themselves is, like, smut and, you know, just vulgar.
Because they're not getting the credit for it.
Yeah. But then, like, all these adults are being like, no, there's underlying themes. It's like, it has this progressive message. No, it has this conservative message. And they're going back and forth. And the kids who wrote it are just like, no, we just wrote it to be gross. And that's it. Like, but realizing they do come away understanding, like, oh, everyone's going to have their own interpretation. And there's not really anything we can do about that.
More and more of us are against this book every day. The author is cruel and offensive. And for these reasons, we demand this book be banned from all schools, stores, and libraries. This book is nothing but smut and vulgarity purely for the sake of smut and vulgarity.
That's just because you're too young to understand the underlying themes.
There are no underlying themes. We know that for a fact.
You just failed to understand what the author meant.
The author meant to be as gross as possible because it was funny.
No, that's such a simplistic view.
God damn it, there is no deeper meaning in this book. Read it again.
Oh, so you're suggesting that the author just arbitrarily made fun of Sarah Jessica Parker for no reason?
Yes!
But what would be the point?
There is no point. It's just because Sarah Jessica Parker is fucking ugly.
No writer would take the time to make fun of Sarah Jessica Parker just because they think she's ugly.
Yes, they would!
It is because Miss Jessica Parker is a metaphor in the book for oppression felt by the lower class.
What? Dude, that is not in the book at all!
Boys, this book is an important look at how liberals are hurting this country.
What?
And we...
Scrotie McBoogerballs is the most conservative hating liberal in literature.
What book did you read?
There's nothing about liberals or conservatives!
Oh yeah, then why does Sarah Jessica Parker's butt cheese end up in Scrotie's milkshake?
Which is why, and that is something that I genuinely, like, it is something I think about myself as a creator, where it's like, I do want to, like, in the work that I tell, I often, like, am like, I have a very intentional message or a very intentional themes that I'm trying to explore and a story I'm trying to tell. And I'm trying to convey that. And it, I think a mark of a good piece is, like, I want to judge and critique works I see in my own work as being like, okay, what do I think the message is? Did that message get conveyed? When I'm trying to convey a theme, I want audiences to get that. But I also understand I can't control what people are going to interpret. Once it's out there, it's out there. And as a fan scholar, I sometimes get frustrated when I see audience members be like, well, why aren't the creators trying to better prove, like, I have this interpretation of what the story is about. Why aren't the creators like standing by that interpretation and like criticizing fans who don't have the different interpretation? And I'm like, because that's not their place. Like, we as an audience can argue about the different interpretations, but I'm very much like, yes, there is a responsibility that creators have to an audience, and like, yeah, you gotta like think about what your intentions are and what the impact might be, but ultimately your responsibility is to your story. And once it's out there, people are going to receive it how they're going to receive it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure like they've said in a sort of way that exact same statement.
And so that's why I'm like, okay, Tale of Scrotie McBoogerballs.
We did watch other episodes.
I know, but this is the one that's most interesting to me. That one, I was like, yeah, I get that. And what I think the movie doesn't work as well. Because the movie seems to be all about, like, everyone's upset about the swearing. People are upset about the swearing and not about the violence and gore. That's so ridiculous. We're gonna go to war over it. And I'm watching it being like, I'm not even upset about the swearing. Definitely not upset about the swearing. Not even upset about the violence. I'm upset about the bigoted imagery.
Yeah.
And that's
kind of what their like follow-up episode on the movie is from season 21.
Oh, that was the one that I didn't have time to watch.
Yeah, so that one has a whole plot line where like Terrence and Philip get like a Netflix deal and they're old now, but they're like still doing the same jokes and like the kids are still watching it, but Kyle isn't really vibing with it anymore, and he's like really questioning the humor of it, and he's like questioning like all the punching down, and he's like, why all these jokes at the expense of others? But he also kind of like, the episode basically proposes that he does kind of have a point, and like it does like really pay attention to his feelings about the show that he used to love and watch but no longer feels the same way about. But I think the main issue that it has with Kyle is that he doesn't like really have another idea besides getting rid of the show.
Yeah. Well, what I want to argue, as someone who I do consider myself in some ways a critic and an academic, in that role, I don't think it's really the right place to call out offensive or hurtful storylines and bigotry. Like, yes, as like a person, I'll be like, that's upsetting to me, or that can be upsetting to other people. But I think it's kind of lazy as a critic or academic to just dismiss something as bad because you don't like what it's saying. And so what I want to actually argue why I don't think the film works as well is it's not just because of this. It's specifically the song that bugged me the most was like Cartman singing about how one of the moms, which
Kyle's mom.
Yeah, how Kyle's mom is a bitch. And then it's like him and like it's like around the world, this is what everyone's singing. And it's like,
because like one of his character traits is that he's horrendously racist.
Yeah.
That is one of the ways in which Cartman is one of the most evil characters on television.
So that's the thing that I was like, this is what I feel like it undermined the film undermined its own point by being like, what everyone's just upset about is the swearing, when it shows in a song, oh, it's oh, they're swearing, oh, it's awful, it's they're saying bitch, but it's also just a bunch of examples of racism. So
Yeah.
that's to me why I personally, it was like, if I'm actually gonna like try to be like critiquing the film, I'm like, in terms of like the structure and the storytelling and the themes, I feel like it lacks nuance in a way that like actually doesn't, it weakens the themes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I also feel like the swearing thing is kind of a stand-in for anything presented in fiction, because like Kenny doesn't die from swearing, he dies from thinking that he can do something himself that was presented in a piece of fiction, and like when he does it in real life it does have actual effects. Like I feel
Yeah.
like the swearing argument is like a microcosm of like as we talked about, like the idea that a movie's gonna like automatically make you do things. Like part of the point of the South Park movie was like it's not entirely like media's responsibility to educate people and take care of people, it's just media, and you're responsible for your own actions, and we're responsible for how we educate and take care of kids. That's not a movie's job, especially not a movie that they're not supposed to be watching in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that point. It's definitely a film that is trying to play around with, mess around with ideas of morality, considering that Satan is a character who we're sympathetic to.
Yeah. And canonically in the South Park universe, the vast majority of people go to hell.
Yes. Yeah. Which also, can I say, in terms of like sequences and like the style and production of things, I do really like how uh trippy the sequence where like you think Kenny is going up to
Yeah.
heaven and he falls down to hell. Like that looks cool.
Yeah. Little boy, you're going to hell.
Yeah. And like that is, I mean, I feel like the NBC's The Good Place ended up exploring that a whole lot more in depth later, but like there is absolutely some critique of like, oh, you don't fit specific set of morals, okay, you're going to hell and there's no way to improve. Like you're sending literal children to hell because they did like a couple of things. Okay, like sure, that's the way we should run our afterlife. Like,
and Kenny's so sweet. From the
yeah.
episodes I've watched, he's so sweet. He's like a legit superhero. He saves up money to buy his little sister a doll.
Oh. Well, and I do think I think I've seen you say this in like reviews and stuff and online where you've pointed out that this is like a really crass and cruel show that also has a lot of heart to it.
Yeah. Yeah, like the whole reason everyone's endeared to Butters is because he's adorable.
Mm.
And like it's also just really fun to see the juxtaposition of him being very adorable and then he's like horrendously tortured either physically or mentally.
Yeah. What I noticed in terms of like kind of these kids being like, I don't know, they're
And that also kind of leads into one of the other episodes that we haven't really brought up, Marjorine.
oh
It's entirely based on the boys being really confused about the girl's cootie catcher.
yeah.
And like
um
it's all about like girls sleepover, but they're all like the boys are also like playing scientist and doing a whole heist to get the cootie catcher and figure out how it works.
can I say one last thing about the movie before we move
Yes.
on? Which is basically, I just wanted to add to like kind of this thought about like when you said that Kenny was a superhero, I want to make sure to point out the fact that the war is reversed and everyone survives in the movie because Kenny basically like uses his wish to like return everything back to normal, which means he's still going to hell, but like he ends up kind of sacrificing himself for like the greater good and because he cares about his friends.
Yeah, that's like one of the all-time South Park moments, the Kenny face reveal slash sacrifice for everything to go back the way it was before the war. That's also Blizzy McGuire's profile pic on Twitter, the internet famous Blizzy McGuire from the 360 music video.
Wait, what? But what's image of Kenny?
Of like the face reveal moment.
Oh.
That's her profile pic.
Oh. I don't think I knew that. So, okay. You were saying about Marjorine.
Yeah, like basically a lot of Marjorine is centered around like average kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the main focus. And it also has like a bunch of fun gender stuff in it.
Yeah. Well, and that I think the other episode that we haven't discussed yet, the other episode that we watched that to discuss for this episode also has to do with like gender, which is the Cissy.
Yeah.
Which is the most recent of the episodes I watched. And they were both
and their best trans representation to date.
Yeah. I actually found Marjorine a more interesting representation of transness than the Cissy.
Yeah, there's like a lot of fan discussion about like, is Butters trans based off of this episode?
Because it's like, okay, the boys send Butters in being like, okay, you're gonna pretend you're gonna be this new transfer student, Marjorine, and you're gonna need to find out these girls' secret. And it's really interesting because then this like fear that Butters experiences of being like found out to be a boy, I'm like, that's really like reflects the horrors and the fears of being a trans person trying to pass. I mean, obviously passing is kind of its own whole bullshit thing. Being like, being like, okay, like and
then at the end he's kind of dragged out of the sleepover because like he was having fun, like he's on the phone with Carmen like I'm just having fun with my girlfriends.
And like they also like kind of a real representation of how shitty like preteen girls can be, like being like, you're weird, and then how that can also be flipped on its head and be like, oh no, we'll give you a pretty makeover and let's just dance and have fun. Like
it's a very real representation of how in every sleepover someone will always end up crying because of something someone else did.
Yep I definitely remember sleepovers like that when I was 10. It's kind of sweet and sad.
Yeah.
And then
the makeover, Oh, they're dancing to the Justin Timberlake CD.
Yeah. That's of its time. But yeah, and then the Cissy is like, the Sissy's really interesting, at least in how it's like contributing to the conversation about like bathrooms, basically.
Yeah.
Because it starts off being like it kind of creates this whole thing because Cartman is trying to just poop in peace, and so goes into the girls' room, and then they're like, "You can't be here," and then he's like, "Well, I'm Erica. I can use this bathroom," and
it's also partially because he's kind of impatient with
yeah,
the boys in the boys' room. Like, he can't wait.
And like, I don't know, I do kind of like how it's playing on this like really, you know, this awful alt-right talking point, not even alt-right, but just like this conservative talking point of being like, well, men are just trying to come into women's bathrooms to molest them, and it's like, first of all, if the trans woman is a woman, but in this case it's kind of like they are like, oh well, we've got to respect you and treat you because we don't want to cause like a big, you know, national outcry. And then it's
like
also just
the
like,
motivation isn't even like the big nefarious one. The motivation is that this bathroom is nice.
Exactly. And that's what's like so kind of funny about it too. And then also, I don't really understand the whole the dad is actually
the Lord plotline. Yeah, so canonically Randy is Lord, and therefore by extension he is also Charlie XCX. Some people say we're alike. They say we've got the same hair.
That's like the kind of, that's where one of those cases where I'm like, it's camping the satire in some way because it's so out there that it's like looped back around to feeling like being a parody of parodies. Because I could not have seen that plot point come.
And like that entire plot line is about like this guy wanting to expose Lord.
But then he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because she writes a really good, or the dad, what's the guy's name?
Randy
writes a really good song about like just wanting to like,
he's Spencer from Smoshes, one of his comfort characters.
What? Randy?
Yes.
Because he's Lord? Why is
not because he's Lord. Spencer, like one of the podcast episodes, they for some reason they started talking about Randy, and he's like, he's one of my comfort characters. Everything he does is funny to me.
I mean, of the scenes that I saw, he doesn't seem to be outright offensive, at least.
It depends on the episode. It depends on the storyline.
Well, would you say any of the characters in South Park are comfort characters of yours now?
I really like Kenny, and I really like Butters, and I also really like Tweek, and by extension Craig.
Who are those?
They are the gay couple that the fandom manifested into existence.
Oh, right. Okay, you sent me a video essay on this, but I didn't actually watch it. What? Can you explain?
So it started with an episode in season 3 that was all about the boys pitting Tweek and Craig against each other to like see which is like the most like troublemaking kid in their class. And like Tweek is this very anxious boy that is like very highly caffeinated, and his parents may or may not be putting meth in his coffee.
Oh, okay.
And Craig is very deadpan, and he's always like flipping people off, and he like plays a big part in this like trilogy of episodes where a lot of the time he's just like very deadpan calling the boys stupid. And like this kind of thing always happens to you. And like, you guys stole my birthday money.
So like kind of is he the Daniel?
Daniel Interview with the Vampire?
Yeah.
Yeah. He kind of is the Daniel of that trilogy of episodes. But like, yeah, from the episode where they fight, there was like a shipping culture that arose from that episode to the point where like a decade later, Matt and Trey noticed and made a whole episode about the boys learning that like the girls are making yaoi art of them.
Oh.
And it's one of the best episodes of the show. Like if there's a Tweak and Craig episode, it's gonna be good. Like they're all bangers all the time. But yeah, they basically kind of realize that they do have feelings for each other in that episode. And then after that, they're like a canon couple in the show.
Damn. Okay. I'm curious. Okay, because you just said that if there's an episode with the two of them, it's going to be a great episode. What makes a good South Park episodes to you? Like, what do you think is like, is there a formula?
I think it's consistently ones where they're being really creative, have a really good grasp of what it is that they're satirizing, and are focusing in some way on the kids. And there also has to be like some level of seriousness to it. Like the Britney episode, it's devastating.
Yeah.
But it's also funny. And it's also really creative with the way it handles the whole Britney situation. It also has a good grasp on the situation. And it mainly follows the kids.
Yeah. That's true. You know what? Like a lot of the episodes we watched, all of like the more recent ones, for sure, it's like it's ending up saying something about a subject that I haven't actually seen articulated in that way before, and it does really ring true. Like being like, hey, this is like, look at all this cruelty that is, you know, Britney Spears is being put through, or like, hey, like here's a way to like look at banned books and stuff where it's like, it's not even like even the most controversial stuff, like people are gonna make meaning out of it, or like, hey, like here's some way to look at the bathroom bills and stuff. Like you are, yeah, they are kind of all, even if like I feel desensitized and uninterested by the kind of gross out crude humor of some of the earlier episodes, these later episodes are saying things I haven't seen in media before. So
And like they still maintain like a lot of the like grosser elements later on, like their streaming service special, a lot of it is about like this water park that's all the water becomes pee. And that's the whole thing from that special.
Yeah. I mean, the Tale of Scrotie McBoogerballs.
Yeah. Most of it is puke jokes.
Please do not include any of those clips or imagery.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Absolutely not.
Also, they're just making fun of Sarah Jessica Parker for no reason other than they can. Like, they literally even say it in the episode. They are not picking...
They're like, what's the meaning? Like, what does Sarah Jessica Parker represent?
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know, she's ugly. And it's like, no, she's not, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like, yeah, the combination of all these things is what makes the show particularly camp to me, is how it like transgresses for transgression's sake, but it also like sometimes has a point to it. but like it's also just fun and kind of liberating to just do whatever because it's a TV show and you can do whatever. Like it's just fun.
I mean, I didn't have fun, but I'm glad that you did. And I do want stuff like this to exist.
Like it's just anarchic. Like that's the
Mm,
spirit of the show to me. It's very much like the environment it rose out of, like the late 90s kind of do whatever you want. It was made by people in their 20s. Like it very much has a really specific energy that not a lot of media has right now, nor does
yeah.
it like even allow to have right now, because everything is so corporate and like as we
Mm-hmm.
talked about, like there's like less chances of newer voices
Mm-hmm.
to like get their stuff made.
Yeah.
And like that's part of like one of the evolutions of the show is like they have gone old, and like a decent amount of the relatively newer episodes like from the halfway point on are about like how they feel old and how they've like grown out of certain aspects of the humor that was prevalent in the earlier seasons. Like
Mm-hmm.
in the article, uh as in the case with any anniversary, this was written for their 20th anniversary. Parker and Stone have been doing a lot of their own assessment of the show's legacy. It does feel like we used to be punk rockers flipping off the principal, and now we're old men telling people, get off my lawn, Stone told the LA Times. For us, it's material. The world changes. It's interesting. The show has never stayed away from its meta commentary, with the at season 15 episode You're Getting Old continuing to be, in BJ Colangelo's opinion, the most thought-provoking and timeless entry in the show's history. It was the moment they let audiences in on a little behind-the-scenes feelings about growing older, becoming out of touch with the current coolness, and how cynicism poisons our perspectives.
Yeah.
And like in relation to the show's whole energy and vibe, she writes that in our increasingly sterilized world, I'm weirdly grateful for South Park and its unapologetic approach to comedy. It doesn't always hit the mark, but at least the show is coming from an honest, yes, problematic feelings can be honest, place. South Park might as well be the Library of Alexandria of cultural commentary, even if half of the books are just pages of poop jokes. No matter how badly some people want to burn it to the ground, it would be a detriment to society to erase the undeniable impact it has had on pop culture.
Yeah. Because you don't need to watch it either.
Yeah.
And if people do want to watch it, they'll give the money to support it. That's what art's for, baby. And yeah,
And like this one,
I oh,
I think it might be my final quote from the article, which like very much relates to all of this and what you were saying, art. She writes, I came across a quote from Matt Stone from an interview with a Seattle Post intelligencer, Seattle mentioned, where he said, believe it or not, we consider South Park to be art, and art should be a Rorschach test. It should be an examination of our own emotions. I can't stop thinking about how accurate of a description a Rorschach test is to describe South Park, given the way public reactions to controversial episodes are often in direct conflict with one another.
yeah, because I don't think art's role is to tell you what to think. If a piece of media is trying to tell you what to think, that's propaganda.
Yeah.
If I think art is for telling you what the creator of it thinks, and it or feels or just thinks is funny or entertaining, and you get a look at it and be like, how do I feel about this? And I do think it absolutely is camp to be like refusing to be defined, refusing to be one ideology.
Yeah, it's also very camp to like unapologetically say this show is art, even though it's like very arguably not artful. Like the drawings and animation are very basic. It's all construction paper. A lot of its humor is like very stupid and
Mm-hmm.
questionable and very mean.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
that doesn't mean it's not art.
this is this is John Waters. This is King of
Yeah.
Filth. Like this is lowbrow, low taste, and one of the like the world we can't have high art unless we have low art.
Yeah.
And wait, isn't that even one of Satan's points in the movie?
He
That like
I think he mentions that without good there'd be no evil, so it must be good to be evil sometimes.
there you fucking go. There you fucking go. That's one of
And
them.
I love that you mentioned John Waters, because I'm not sure if I like mentioned him if like in like one of my letterboxed reviews for the movie, or if like you just figured it out independently. But I do very much believe that South Park is like kind of like one of the children of John Waters, at least
Yeah.
in like in terms of form and content, because it like there's like this amateurish quality to it that also somehow has become an institution,
Yeah.
like how John Waters has been like honored by the Academy Museum and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
is a member of the Academy.
Mm-hmm. I just thought of that on my own, but
Yeah.
I think that's because you've been posting a lot of reposting a lot of screen grabs from Pink Flamingos recently.
Yeah,
And it,
I follow that like daily John Waters screen caps
yeah.
account. But yeah, like that is a thought I've had for a while about this show. Like it does follow a kind of Waters tradition, even though it's like not exactly super clear. Like the characters are all very likely straight white kids in middle America. It's very
Mm-hmm.
much not the characters that John Waters tends to focus on. But stylistically, in the way that it's written, it is.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I remember you one of the things you pitched me on uh as like a reason to include this in our discussion is how it's kind of an examination of American masculinity, and you're like kind of like how Supernatural in some ways is. And like you shared with me this YouTube essay about the Y2K attitude era,
Yeah.
and I can absolutely see how like South Park is this aspect of like it fits into this kind of
Yeah,
like
like there is this boyish quality to it.
yeah. And it is, I mean, it's a popular show. It's been airing for so many years. But there's also something about the fact that these characters are children, and they're like, yeah, they're like really filthy, like foul-mouthed, mean, but I don't know. There's something that's just in the back of my mind that's not really well articulated, but there is something about them that feels a little bit like they aren't fully in power. They aren't fully like they in some ways are a bit of these outsiders because maybe they have these kind of controversial opinions, but also because like they like it's constantly a threat in all of the episodes I watch that they could get grounded. They could get in trouble.
Because
Which
they're
I
kids.
yeah.
They don't really get to make the rules and they don't know everything about the worlds.
And like
Like
in
they're
some way,
fundamentally 9 years old, even though they do all this stuff. Like in a way, they still wouldn't quite have the emotional maturity of someone who would have more quote unquote power and
yeah.
control over their lives.
Like, and it's transgressive in to show these kids being like they're doing all these awful things. Oh, isn't that like unexpected? And there's humor to that, but in some way they're also like they're able to be transgressive characters because of their youth. It gives them a pass to explore these ideas in some way,
Yeah.
I think, which
One of
is
one of the episodes in the earlier seasons is about like them learning sex ed and condom use, but they like believe that they have to wear condoms all the time
no.
around girls. So like they like start panicking whenever a girl is around, and they're like, quickly, we need to help Timmy get his on.
Oh, wait, that's kind of sweet. They're trying to help each other out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with the cootie catcher. They're like taking this thing that is like a silly playground game and taking it to like the most extreme. Like we have to treat this as serious.
Yeah, and I do feel like that's like in a way a commentary on their masculinity. Like the vibe of that
Mm,
episode is very like men would rather do a really elaborate heist than ask one of the girls how they make that thing.
yeah, yeah,
And like at the end they're like, does anyone have a piece of notebook paper and a pencil so I can make another one?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's like these characters are like these vehicles to express a kind of American masculinity that has evolved as the creators have gotten older, time has passed. The characters' views and opinions change. Like you talk about, was it Kyle the one who then like starts criticizing the show and stuff? But there's something like the fact they're almost like kept in this like perpetual state of being 9 that opens, I feel like, that is really makes them especially right, like because these characters are perpetually 9 years old, it makes them very like easy and like it's an easy way to maybe explore complex ideas, I guess, and just like try things out and not like if you had I don't know, I definitely think that the show's themes would work differently if it was a bunch of adult characters, because then we would maybe have to feel like we'd have to take what they're saying more seriously.
Yeah, and I do feel like that's also true of their girl characters. Like they're mainly like a lot of the girl centric storylines are mainly through Wendy, and like there's also kind of evolution of them. Like with the movie, she's like very childish, like at least in the tone of voice. But like
Mm-hmm.
then as the seasons goes on, she's like very much a kind of voice of reason for the show. And like in one of their most devastating episodes, it's about like the girls photoshopping themselves and their body image, and it ends with
Oh.
Wendy like just caving, and she's alone in the school's computer room photoshopping herself, and it's devastating.
Oh.
And in one of the serialized era seasons, it's all about Cartman having this girlfriend, Heidi, who starts off as like this sweet kid, but he's so horrible to her that he eventually like turns her into a girl version of himself.
Hmm.
Princess Weeks made a whole video about that storyline.
Yeah, I never watched it, but maybe I will now. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess that's this weird paradox with this show, huh? Is that it doesn't take things seriously, and yet it does take things seriously.
Like that's very much an aspect of camp to me.
Mm-hmm.
That like this show has the ability to just want to be completely stupid and do whatever and be pure anarchy while
Mm-hmm.
also getting serious when it wants to be serious. While also at the same time not telling you what to think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I guess one last little thing that I find interesting is um I know I've said this episode name so many times and I'm still not
The
used to
one
it.
about the book. The one
The
about
one
the
about the
book.
book. Thank you. Um is it's like, oh, it's all this awful imagery, but actually there's really this deep meaning. And then there's also like the reverse of like when they read The Catcher in the Rye and they're like, it's supposed to be controversial, but it's super tame. All of that being said, I think one of the most interesting parts of that episode is when the boys are like, let's write a story together, like let's write our awful gross story. It's like they're having so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's this like lighthearted music and they're like seen laughing and stuff. And like it's kind of like in some ways I'm like, is it kind of like trying to like play on that like, ooh, it's this dark thing, but it's also super light. But it's also like that is a really kind of real depiction of what writing a story with your friends can be like.
Yeah. Like that scene does have like an earnest energy to it that it feels like it's not entirely making this contrasting joke.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that that's probably what I hope is that, if they've been doing it for so many years, that's what making this show is like for its creators. So they get to
Yeah.
have fun with their friends.
Yeah. There's the documentary called 6 Days to Air about like the whole process of making one episode and like the 6 days it takes, and so much of it is just them laughing at their own jokes. And Bill
Mm.
Hader's in it because that was during the era where he was also a writer for the show, and all he
Oh.
does in that documentary is laugh.
Yeah, I mean,
You
Bill
don't
Hader.
see him write, he's just laughing.
Bill Hader does like laughing at his own jokes.
But like it's not even his own jokes, a lot of it is just him at the table listening to everyone else and he's just laughing.
Oh,
He's just there to laugh, it seems.
well, um, Bill Hader seems like a cool guy.
Yeah.
I can't wait for him to direct a horror movie.
Yeah. I feel like I might have one final thing to say slash bring up from the article. She mentions this quote from one of the episodes, and it's like one of the latter half episodes of the series.
Mm.
And it says, what is PC but a verbal form of gentrification? Spruce everything up, get rid of all the ugliness in order to create a false sense of paradise.
Oof. Interesting.
And I feel like that's one of the things that I find so fascinating about the show is that it does find a sort of joy and fun in ugliness, as it says. And like it's this
Yeah.
very like artificial construction paper show with all the basic colors, and it's very clearly like a TV show, but it's also like we're not going to sanitize the world for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all that contrast that like it's one of the things that makes the show so interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'm like mainly curious about what your final thoughts are.
I don't know. I'm still, I think, sitting with this. Um,
Because like I've been mainly curious about like what you have to say about the show, especially as someone who's like very lukewarm on it. I think it's interesting.
I mean, I think ultimately is it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, and that's fair, and that's also camp.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of the point of camp is that like if it were appealing to everyone, then it wouldn't like really be doing anything special or of note in the first place.
Mm, yeah.
Like the point of good bad taste is itself about liking things that you're either like not supposed to like or that most people wouldn't like or that
Yeah.
are like badly made or like
Yeah.
up to production standards compared to the rest of like the film and television we watch and everyone likes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's and I understand I think why you like it. I think the one of the things I'm sitting with right now is realizing that like I might not like some of the stuff that you want to make in the future. Like I've enjoyed all the scripts and stuff that you've pitched to me, and like I've seen of your thesis film, but I'm kind of sitting here going like, oh yeah, you might make something just for the sake of making it, and I might be like, why? And you should make stuff for the
Yeah.
sake of making it, but I would, and I might not want to make some of the things that you want to make. And that's kind of just like, yeah,
Yeah, and
I,
that's how it should be. It would be really bad if we all liked the same things and made the same art.
yeah. If you can't have good without evil, then maybe evil's good, or whatever that line is. In its most, that's a very, very unnuanced way to say it, but.
Yeah, I kind of heard what's arguably a different version of that in the most recent Girl Scouts and Jello episode, where they were
Mm,
discussing the films of Paul Morrissey and like about how they're kind of weirdly incongruent with his own politics because like he
mm,
was pretty conservative and yet he's like part of the Andy Warhol factory and like
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of subversive subject matter in the films and like just the way that a lot of his films are shot there's like a certain way it's very freak coded
Yep.
and I think it was Annie who mentioned that like he was very much invested in and living in a world of cleanliness and you can't do that without getting in the dirt.
Yeah. Well, I gotta go. I've gotta watch those films soon. I've gotta watch.
Yeah.
Uh,
The other instance of someone in our circle not liking something that I like. I was like,
yeah.
oh, interesting. That's so fun.
I for listeners, not me, a friend of the show who's been a guest, Catherine, did not like Blood for Dracula. Is that what it's called, or Blood
Yeah,
of
Blood
Dracula?
for Dracula.
Yeah, which you were like, Me! Love this film!
It's not as good as Flesh or Frankenstein.
And that's the one I want to prioritize watching, because that photo, that still that you sent me, or that on-set photo, whatever it was, did things to me. And I love Frankenstein. So I need to go watch it.
It's a very fun, unserious movie that was originally released in 3D. And you can kind of tell with some of the shots of like, oh, this is supposed to be like a 3D effect.
Well, we're kind of just rambling about fun movies that we like discussing now, but that aren't South Park.
But maybe future podcast entries.
Maybe future podcasts. Hey, okay, because I don't know if this will make the cut, but if I'm saying it during a recording, I can better manifest it actually happening in the future. When we were talking about lowbrow versus high art, I was reminded I really want us to cover Hannibal at some point.
Yeah.
Because that
also reminds me of another thing that like it is very much South Park related, which is how like South Park is very much within lowbrow territory, but it does have a lot of highbrow acclaim. Like it does have a Peabody Award. Not every show has a Peabody Award, and it won the Peabody Award in the same year as Battlestar Galactica won theirs.
Damn. That's
like, for context, the Peabody Award is mainly like a journalism award that is granted to pieces of media that like the jury or whatever thinks is like particularly meaningful or thoughtful about the world.
I mean, like, yeah, I think it's fair to say that, especially it seems of these like, you know, mid-aughts work, like, you know, Britney's new look and stuff, where it's like they're saying really prescient points about media, and Battlestar Galactica has really, really interesting points to say about politics. So like, I can see it. That makes sense. But yeah. Anyway,
I think this is a really fun conversation. This is definitely one of my favorite episodes. I'm not sure like how coherent I was with my arguments in regards to camp, but I think this was a really good conversation regardless.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I can articulate why this is camp to someone else now. So you made good points. Yeah.
Every time I finish a recording, I was like, I just said word salad.
I was trying to explain to a coworker of mine recently, because I recently taught him what camp was. And so he started calling a bunch of things camp. And then he's kind of being like, wait, am I using that term correctly? And I kind of paused and I was like, honestly, if someone can argue to me why they're calling something camp, I am likely to agree that it is camp. Because
if you can do a well-argued essay.
Because if you're like engaging with the aesthetic or with the themes and the politics, then that is like the intention of camp pieces. And so there you go.
Yeah.
And we engaged the hell out of South Park.
Yeah. Was there any character you liked?
Satan.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's fun. Not even Kenny or Butters.
That Butters not actual death disturbed me too much. That was weird. And then like, what do you mean his parents put him in the basement because they thought he was demon spawn? Like that just upset me.
It's also a Pet Sematary reference. That entire subplot is Stephen King's Pet Sematary.
Oh.
Now we're just talking about other pieces of media.
Now we're just talking about media. We should go because I also need to edit the Student Nurses episode.
Yes.
Because that's coming out Friday, and I work the next 3 days. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I work AM, so I could do some stuff in the PM, or I could, but yeah. I want to try to get it done tonight, so I don't have to worry about it the next 2 days, so that it can be like, I want to have it scheduled tonight and all ready to go up Friday, so I don't have to worry about it. So anyway, South Park was a show.
It's currently running.
And who knows how long it'll run? Forever, maybe?
They've said that they'll stop when someone in Comedy Central tells them to stop. Or whoever it is that they answer to now.
Damn. I guess keep it up, boys. Well, thank you, as always, for challenging me, Fabiola. Genuinely. I like that.
Yay! I love that we recorded the like 2 main challenging things for each other back to back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
kind of base of us that we don't always agree.
Yeah. Because like we're 2 different people who are not going to have the exact same taste in media all the time.
Yeah.
And like that also like sometimes makes me even more excited for conversations, because like once you were like messaging me of like, I don't know about this, I was like, now I'm more excited to talk about this show because I want to hear your thoughts.
But honestly, I think at the end of the day, I already said this, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, I don't know, I just don't like it. At the end of the day, it's not my kind of humor. But
yeah, sometimes you just don't vibe with stuff for not really like any particular reason.
Yeah.
Like there's stuff that you like that I don't like.
What's something I like that you don't like?
I think one thing that comes to mind is that I think it's called Polite Society. That movie.
You didn't like that?
No, I felt it was like really messy and like not sure of like, it felt like it didn't know what it was as a film.
That's fair. I watched it for my sister's birthday, and it's about sisters, so I was like, I like this.
Yeah.
But We Are Lady Parts is definitely better. Very, very good show. Highly recommend if you've never seen it. But anyway.
I feel like we've recorded multiple possible endpoints.
Yes. So let's just hit stop.
Yeah.
We're done. And I'm sorry, editing Fabiola.
It's okay. Bye, I guess.
I have been your co-host, Saffron Hefta-Gaub. You can follow me online everywhere at Gaub Hefta.
And I've been your other co-host, Fabiola. You can find me on Instagram at Fabi0LAHH and on Twitter at Fabiola_Liaño.
Our theme song that you're bobbing your head to right now is by Harrison Lurie.
Give us a rating on Spotify and a review on Apple.
Thank you to our patrons, Nicole Veneto, Jose Liano, and Pericles Sparrow. Please check our episode description for additional links and citations.
Thank you so much.